And today's video is sponsored by a small online business that is female run called Fusion Body Studio. This is your at-home fitness boutique. Like seriously guys, anything that you could ever want is here on Fusion Body Studio, especially for those of you who are maybe a little bit shy about going to the gym or going to a yoga studio. You can do all of this stuff in the comfort of your own home with a bunch of master teachers, including myself. So there are two prices for Fusion Body Studio. For those of you who just want the opportunity to have an exercise platform at home and nothing else, it's only $25 a month, which is literally the price of a yoga drop-in. If you want a little bit more, like you want to do the workshops and have more of a deeper understanding into movements as a whole, it's $40 a month because then you get the workshops too on top of the exercises. Still super cheap. And on top of that, if you use my name, Brice20, all caps, BRIC20 at checkout, you get an additional 20% off your first 6 months. You can't go wrong with that. That's literally like the price of like 1 cup of fancy coffee for the whole month, right? Like 1 cup of fancy coffee will pay for like the whole month for you to have unlimited access to this fitness boutique. So again, if you're interested in joining, use Brice20 at checkout. On top of that, my friends, you also get the first 7 days for free to try it out. So we hope to see you over on Fusion Body Studio. And with that being said, let's get back to the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. This feels very weird because I have my camera turned off. And a little secret before we get going, I was telling Chris, I taught a class this morning early, but unfortunately on my way home from teaching, there was a 5-car pileup on I-75 here in Atlanta, and we were in standstill traffic for a very long time. I'm not going to complain about it because it is what it is, and I hope to God that all of the people that were in that pileup are okay and are safe. I don't know. There were a lot of ambulances, but with that being said, I did not get a chance to make myself camera presentable. And it doesn't matter, right, Chris? Because what matters is the information. And I know most people listen to podcasts anyway with headphones on, so you don't necessarily need to see my face or Chris's face right now. So I apologize if it's weird for you guys, but that is why my camera is off. But Chris, first of all, before we get started on the show today, how are you doing today? How's your Wednesday?
Okay, how are you doing other than being a little sweaty?
Being all sweaty. Again, I caught myself. I was getting mad in the car because, you get stuck in like a parking lot and I had to course correct my thoughts. Thank God I'm not one of those 5 cars. Thank God I'm just sitting in traffic right now and I'm not one of those people who was in a 5-car pileup in the middle of Atlanta. So life is good. I'm safe. I'm a little sweaty, but I'm safe. And I'm so excited. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Chris. You are a wealth of information. And you guys, before I introduce the topic today, I want to remind you guys that Chris I consider you an independent investigative journalist, Chris. I don't know if that's what you consider yourself, but you are doing journalism. And we're going to kind of get into this today, but you're doing true journalism in a time where I feel that the art of journalism is fading from mainstream networks. And your blogs are superb. You really do your due diligence. You cross-check, you fact-check, you really look and dig. And you make hard phone calls to people like old school journalists used to do to try to really get to the bottom of the story. And so if you guys are truly interested in part of journalism is also storytelling, being able to deliver the facts in a way that the reader understands what is being delivered. And you do a superb job at that. So you guys, please make sure that you follow and subscribe to Chris's blog. Again, that's going to be in the description box below. We want to always support independent journalists, independent researchers, because again, as we're going to get into, the world that we live in today is, as most people know, when we're talking about the mainstream networks, like all the mainstream cable shows, as well as like streaming platforms like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO, Peacock, these are considered like mainstream, almost like a new form of a network. And so credibility, I feel like, is it a higher stake when you become that big, but also their credibility has faltered a lot. And if I were sitting in an office of, some of these big streaming platforms or any cable, I would be concerned about that, about making sure that we maintain the integrity of the work, especially at a time when people are talking about fake news and talking more about propaganda and slanting stories to a certain narrative, and being able to try to keep everything as integral as possible. And part of that, Chris, comes down to non-disclosure agreements. So, Chris, where do you want to start with this? Do you want to explain to our audience, just in case people don't know what an NDA is, or non-disclosure agreement, what that is and how that works in like media?
A non-disclosure agreement is essentially an agreement that somebody who has, like in the instance of Maury Terry's investigative journalist files, which were given to several people, it's used as a sort of protection that certain sensitive information is not going to be out.
Right.
It offers legal protection, and that's just kind of really a basic overview of it. And it allows the person who's executed the non-disclosure agreement to pursue remedies through the criminal justice system if it were violated. That could include, punitive damages. It can include, as well as just like a legal record.
Right. And non-disclosure agreements can be for multiple of reasons. It can, again, be protecting sensitive information. It can also include something like release dates for certain
Yes.
episodes, or what, like we think about even with reality TV. We know reality TV stars have to sign NDAs that they're not going to jump the gun and talk about what's going to be aired on the show before the show airs. So these are common. The NDAs are extremely common in, I think, most facets of media production, even in entertainment production. And so this is not something that people are unaware of when they get into this stuff. It's very, very common. And I'm going to pull up one of your blogs just to kind of show our audience what we're going to be referring to today. I'm going to give the title, How a Non-Disclosure Agreement, NDA, Was Abused in the Son of Sam Investigation.
Okay.
And I've heard a lot about this. And so I'm going to let you take it from here, Chris, and kind of give the backstory to our audience, and what the crux of this means for us in the true crime world and the research world and so forth.
Okay, so the general background on the non-disclosure agreement that was related to Maury Terry's investigative documents. There were several people that got together, and they wanted to access Maury Terry's investigative journalist documents. They were in contact with Carl De Niro, Joshua Zeman, who holds these documents through Maury Terry's estates.
And
They contacted that.
Joshua
Go
Zeman,
ahead.
he's the one that directed The Son of Sam, Descent into Darkness, for people who don't know who he is.
Yes,
Which is on Netflix. That's why we brought up Netflix.
that is correct. That is correct. And he has worked with Maury Terry's estates on the documents. So Carl De Niro was wanting more answers about his shooting. Others were willing to help him about his shooting, as well as their own interest in the case. Background checks were not done on these people. Conflict of interest was not done on these people. There are a lot of questions why things were handled the way that they were handled. This should not fall on Carl De Niro. This falls on Joshua Zeman, because, frankly, Carl's he's in a position where he's wanting anybody and everybody to listen to him. And based on him not handling the NDA, he's not responsible for looking into the backgrounds of these people. And there are sensitive information in those files.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just as a timeline of what happens, they get the documents. Eventually, Manny Grossman of the Grossman Files, who originally said that he was supportive of Maury Terry's research, flips. And at some point in time, and I don't know the exact timeline whenever it happened, I would have to timeline at this point. But Manny Grossman changed his stance, said that he believed that David Berkowitz acted alone and that Maury Terry was a joke. And he started distributing documents in violation of the non-disclosure agreements.
Copies of documents that he had received from Maury Terry's estate. Again,
yes.
He had signed that he would keep private due to the production of the Sons of Sam.
That is correct, and it got out of control. He provided copies to people that he podcasted with. He provided copies to people in law enforcement in the state of New York. From what I've been told, I do not know who else he gave documents to. One person that he gave documents to that he podcasted with was Eric Galati. And that's where the problem really starts, because Eric Galati turned around and gave documents to people that he doesn't even know their full background. Like one person, for instance, that he gave documents to, the person, Carl and I both had problems with this person. She was operating under a fake account, and I'm not going to discuss what the person's real name is, but the documents were distributed to this person, and it's a problem.
Right. Chris, I know.
Go ahead.
I know we can't totally understand people's motivations, but what are you speculating? I mean, I honestly, if I signed an NDA, I would be very nervous about making sure I don't leak anything, because I take that very seriously. What do you think the motivation was behind linking all these documents out to the public after? To me, that seems very arrogant, to sign an NDA and then to immediately distribute copies of the thing that you're supposed to keep private. What do you think the motivation was behind that?
I really don't know what the motivation was behind it, other than believing there are certain people that wanted to discredit Maury Terry. And I can't say that I hold Joshua Zeman responsible for that. He has no control over what happened. All the same, he is in charge of the non-disclosure agreements, and he should have properly enforced it across the board.
Absolutely.
He did not do. He did not properly enforce it with Manny Grossman. It's been out of control for years. Eric Galati got the documents from Manny Grossman whenever he tried to say that he did not get them from Manny Grossman, and he received them from somebody who did not sign a non-disclosure agreement. He also tried to tell me that Jon Mitchell did not sign a non-disclosure agreement, which could have given an air that Jon Mitchell provided documents, and that is not accurate. Jon Mitchell signed a non-disclosure agreement. The end. I really don't understand what's going on with some of these people and their motivations behind it, other than some issues with some things with their background regarding conflicts of interest and also how they behaved.
Yeah. And I will say, you guys, if you're not familiar with Jon Mitchell, he's been on my channel before. I really have a lot of respect for Jon. I think he's an incredible researcher and writer. I will tag Jon's blog beneath, as well as some of the videos that Chris and I have done with Jon in the past. How the little interaction I've had with Jon, he seems extremely trustworthy to me, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, Jon, whenever there were first problems with the NDA after Manny Grossman had already leaked information publicly,
Yeah.
Jon went on at Opperman and discussed it. And this was years ago. So, through my conversations with Jon, I did an interview with him. I published it. Joshua Zeman was not happy about the interview. He started threatening Jon Mitchell, which then got forwarded to me. And whenever I mean threatening, it was threatening with legal action. So I went ahead out of respect and took the interview down and continued to interact with him and told him that the way that the non-disclosure agreement was handled wasn't particularly fair because, I mean, he was threatening Jon with legal action based on discussing what was happening with the documents and the people behind it, yet he was not enforcing it with people such as Manny Grossman, who had distributed files, and that's selectively enforcing the NDA. And that's where I have a serious problem with it, and I think Jon probably feels the same way.
I have a serious problem with that too. It seems, from my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it seems like Manny Grossman gets away with a lot of bad behavior. It makes me suspicious of why he would go after someone like Jon Mitchell, but not after Manny. When Manny, am I correct in saying he was the first to kind of leak some of the science things that
some of the bad behavior? Jon was the first to leak some of the bad behavior, although names were not given.
Right. Okay.
I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
I'm just shaking my head at these people right now, Brice.
It's I'm looking at your blog right now. There was a quote from Manny. He said, "When I began in 2021, I had no clue that Josh Zeman's incredible takedown of Maury Terry's work was on the immediate horizon." First of all, I don't think that Zeman took down Maury's work, to be honest with you. I still think, even at the end of The Sons of Sam on Netflix, they kind of dismiss Maury Terry's work. I think it's kind of in vain because there's so much overwhelming evidence that I don't think, in what world did he take down Maury Terry's work, to be honest with you. I think more and more people are now aware of the alternate theory of Son of Sam's, and I think more and more people are actually aware that there more than likely was more than one culprit and that there was more than likely a cult involved. But nonetheless, that's just my opinion. Manny Grossman goes on to say, "I simply went out one day to film my first video, completely unaware of it. But of course, like any good producer would do, I immediately ramped up production once I realized it was coming out. It also didn't hurt that we were going viral at that time anyway. So to me, the stars were aligned in 2021. You say this comment, while candid, reveals an opportunistic approach to a story rooted in decades of trauma, unsolved violence, and deeply sensitive material. For a neutral researcher drawn to truth-seeking, Grossman admits his ramp-up in production was commercially strategic and timed to coincide with Zeman's high-profile documentary rollout." So do you think that... You say also that Grossman's alignment with the timing, coupled with his access to the confidential files, further complicates the ethics of how these materials were handled. So from a legal perspective, what for my audience to understand how unethically, why is what Manny Grossman is saying here unethical as far as like NDAs are concerned? Can you explain that to my audience who doesn't know things about production? And
well, I mean, like, for example, in Maury Terry's documents, there's sensitive information. There's witness names, there's sources' names, there's suspects' names. There are physical addresses. There are social security numbers. There are records that are criminal records. And a lot of this should not be made public. And you can't just go around and willy-nilly distribute them to whomever you want. I'll go as far as say if this was a company like Capital One distributing these kind of documents, from
Oh,
their
they'd be,
customer base, they would be litigated,
oh,
and
absolutely, they would be.
it would be large scale litigation, and it's happened before in the past. I mean, we've all seen whenever people's privacy and sensitive information is breached, and what happens to these companies. I do get to a certain extent that some people wanted the information out there because they want the case, they supposedly want the case solved.
Right.
All the same, you don't get to just distribute the documents to whomever you want.
No.
That is not your choice. And even if you have not signed the NDA and you got them from somebody that signed the non-disclosure agreement, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You don't get a free pass just because you didn't sign the non-disclosure agreement.
Right. And that, I want to reenter that, especially to my international audience. And I'm sure it's pretty similar in a lot of Western countries. Like, even if you request a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act, like you get some files, a lot of times the files you get have a lot of information redacted. So what that means is things are blacked out. So even in the government, they are pretty strict about making sure private information is withheld. And when we're looking at someone like Maury Terry's notes, like his estate, like I know from what I've heard, and of course, I mean, listen, I've got notebooks full of notes. Like, no one really understands my organization but me. When you're taking notes and you're researching, you've got your own system of how you, I'm sure you're the same way, Chris, of how you organize things. If someone were to come look at my notes, they would be very confused, as to what's going on page by page by page. And so I understand that when people were going through Maury Terry's stuff, that it was a little bit of chaos, like trying to figure out. I mean, this is decades worth of information. And so, of course, Maury Terry had addresses written down, phone numbers written down, very sensitive information written down. But I think even if Maury Terry were alive today, I don't even think he would ever, because I know even in his book he changed names. Like, he seemed to ethically understand that there needs to be a boundary on what's released on people. And
Yeah, I mean, back to that. I mean, releasing this kind of information, also anybody's names who are in there that are still alive
yeah,
that could have cooperated with people, it chills cooperation. So you have to wonder the motivations behind it. And this has not been easy on David Berkowitz either.
no,
He resides in maximum security. He tried to help for years, for decades, advance knowledge of the case and advance trying to help solve problems with the case. And this was how he was rewarded for it.
right.
Having this kind of information just dumped to anybody, and then people expect that there are going to be good outcomes from it. I mean, he reverted to the loan, saying that he acted alone on June 8th, 2023. And the documents had been out before then.
So you think he was trying to cover for people, and like it caused a panic, so he redacted what he said?
I'm not gonna speak on behalf of David Berkowitz for his motivations for why he reverted to the lone shooter. And I know that Eric began distributing documents, I believe, and I could be wrong. I don't have the exact timeline when he started distributing documents, but it was after David Berkowitz reverted. Regardless, the documents had already started to be distributed beforehand.
Right.
And all the podcasts that were being done, as well as Manny Grossman's podcast, it was making his life difficult. He has flat out told me that in writing, and he's told other people that in writing.
Pandora's box had been opened by that point, basically.
Yes, and like I've said numerous times, talking in a maximum security environment, it's not looked on well. So
right.
I can't say that I blame him for reverting.
It's like he's damned if he does and he's damned if he doesn't at this point, because I just so I have a question about, we talked about these big, you alluded to, like, when there's a breach in these big companies, and we've seen this happen where they go through litigation And it's a huge problem when people's private information is released and these companies end up paying for it. At what point, Chris, does Netflix kind of become, is there a world in which Netflix could be held liable for these NDAs being broken?
Netflix has nothing to do with it. I mean, obviously, Netflix produced documentaries.
Right.
I can't really speak if Netflix would be liable. I don't think that they would be.
So
That's only my opinion.
right,
They weren't involved at all on any level with the NDA.
that was just Josh Zeman that was involved in that. Was it him
That
that?
is
Yeah,
yeah, that's correct. And I'll say this much about Joshua Zeman. He believes that David Berkowitz did not act alone. He doesn't want to speak publicly about Manny Grossman because he's tired of it, because he's also been attacked within the Son of Sam community, and I can't speak further about him on that. But at the same time, he was given Maury Terry's documents. I believe Maury Terry considered him trustworthy and a friend in
right.
order,
Hand him over.
yeah, and I would think that he might want to consider making a public statement, disavowing Manny Grossman's behavior if he believes that David Berkowitz didn't act alone, and he hasn't done it.
Yeah. I found you have Jon Mitchell's quote here, which I think sums it up properly. He says, Jon Mitchell says, you have it quoted here in your blog, the NDA had been improperly and selectively enforced with others who violated its terms and conditions. From the beginning, in my opinion, the intent was to suppress any and all evidence that David Berkowitz did not act alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so do you think, so my question, and this is just, and I know we probably don't have the answer to this, but in speculation, I have speculated that people like Manny Grossman are controlled opposition. I've said that since day one. That's my opinion. And Jon Mitchell gives a good point here. Do you think that do you think, Chris, and I don't know if you have an opinion or even want to give your opinion, but do you think that this private information was leaked just by Manny on a whim because he felt like it? Or do you think there's more to this story?
I don't even want to get into his head, Brice, because that is a deep, dangerous clusterfuck of a dive. Sorry for my language.
No, you're fine. You can say whatever you want. I swear all the time on my show, so it's fine.
So yeah, I mean, getting into his head for the motivations behind doing it. I mean, you can look at observable information.
Yeah.
And information found out about his background.
You
can make an estimated guess for why he did it. I mean, Joshua Zeman has told me, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. He said Manny Grossman has an agenda, and that's really all I feel comfortable with what Joshua Zeman said to me in emails, and I have quite a few emails from him.
Yeah. Well, you have here, I'm just going to talk with Manny Grossman. You write here, who repeatedly publicly denied his father's PR work for law enforcement, later admitted ties to the Police Benevolent Association, the PBA, in a 2025 interview on a podcast with Sal Greco, a prior NYPD law enforcement employee. Gross eventually asserted that he believed David Berkowitz acted in concert with others, but shifted his position after obtaining the files. According to sources, he also submitted documentation to law enforcement authorities in the state of New York. As documented in prior blogs, Grossman has a clear pattern of spreading disinformation, making public attacks to discredit, humiliate, and shame researchers who point out his fallacies and blatant disinformation.
Yes. Can't say much more than that.
He is, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, and I'm not saying this to be mean, this is just the pattern that I've observed in the limited interaction I've had with Grossman, is that he has a hard time controlling his emotion, and he's not really good at hiding his intention. Like, he's not, in my opinion, I feel like he is controlled opposition. I feel like there's more to his story, and he's not doing a lot of times controlled opposition, they're clever, and you don't realize they're controlled opposition until many years later. But with him,
Yes.
it's like he can't help but tell on himself. If you know what I mean. Like, and I don't want to say a lack of intelligence there. It just might just be a personality default where he's not sly enough. And that's one thing that drives me crazy. And we're going to talk, I think, more about this in our next episode when we get into like stalking and bad, things that are happening in the true crime world in general. But the public attacks to discredit, humiliate, and shame research, choose point out his fallacies and blatant disinformation. That's the one thing that really drives me crazy about him the most. And I know a lot of people who do this. There are a lot of people who, instead of listening to the other side's points in a debate, instead of just listening and responding to the points of debate, they dehumanize.
Well, my opinion, and I will say this about Grossman as well. I think one of his main problems is, you are correct. He operates highly on emotions, and he's very impulsive, and he does not think about the repercussions of what is going to happen before he just makes a live podcast.
Right.
Or before he starts clickety clacking and typing things on his community post section on YouTube. And then he gets in trouble for it, and then he has to take it down.
Right.
And that's something that he needs to, whoever he's friends with, they just need to put him in a room and say, bro, it's time for an intervention. You got to stop doing it, because you are not helping yourself.
No. And Chris, I've said this before. I know I've said this to Mike. I absolutely believe that there were multiple people involved. I believe there was a cult working out of Untermeyer Park. I absolutely believe, first of all, there's overwhelming evidence to support that theory. Second of all, these last 5 years, I have been heavily involved in researching secret societies, all sorts of different conspiracies. And so there are certain patterns that you see in all of these stories, from something that happened 200 years ago to something that happened in 1976, like the Son of Sam. There are patterns here. That's my opinion based on my research and my experience in seeing these things. Now, frankly, if somebody else believes that Berkowitz is the son of Sam and there was no one else, I don't actually mind if somebody has that opinion, because we all have opinions. What I mind is when you start to, harass people and name call people and try to dehumanize them simply because they have a different opinion than you. And it's almost like a 12-year-old girl. It's like it's a middle school behavior. And, people are nuanced, and people, and so that's the problem with Manny. I want to reiterate that with anybody watching this. Like, I don't care that Manny has a different opinion. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. What bothers me is the way that he responds to people who think differently than he does. That's what is, I think, and you're right, Chris, like, I've never had to delete anything that's been taken off of my channel has been taken down by the platform. I don't ever have to take things down, because I try to, even though I get emotional about topics and I have opinions, I rarely go live. I have very few lives. I normally do pre-planned podcasts like this one with you, where things are organized and we know what we're going to talk about, and there's thought put into it beforehand. So it's not just, split second decisions based off of emotion. And so if any of Manny's crew is listening to us right now as we talk about this, we're looking at the facts of what happened, that there was a breach in the NDA. One of the main culprits was Manny Grossman, and he seems to be behind a lot of the problems when it comes to this investigation. And my issue when it comes to, again, personally, I don't care that he disagrees with us. It doesn't bother me. What bothers me is his treatment of other people. But when we look at this from a bigger perspective, I think it was, again, Jon Mitchell who said, like, this is the intent was to suppress any and all evidence that David Berkowitz did not act alone. That is the heart. What Jon Mitchell said there is the heart of my problem with this as well. Is there an ongoing intentional, we'll say conspiracy, right? To try to keep the truth from coming out to the general public. What do you think? Do you agree with that comment too, Chris, or what do you think that
there does seem to be a concerted effort to not show everything that happened. I will say that, and I know that I mean, I will go ahead and speak on behalf of Jon on this. There seems to be a real concerted effort to discredit his research and attack his book, and it's been going on for years. And Jon has also had, without going into further detail, Jon has also had problems with being harassed, as well as his sources. He's had recent problems with it, and he has an attorney on it.
And that is where that, I think, Chris, for me specifically, is the crux of the major overall problem. Because if this is going to happen in the Son of Sam case, it's going to happen in multiple cases. And
okay, I'll go ahead and say what happened to Jon Mitchell. I'm going to go ahead and say it, but it needs to be divorced from this, because obviously Joshua Zeman has nothing to do with this, and he's not to blame.
Okay.
And yeah. Jon's attorney has yet to figure out what's happened behind it.
Right.
Essentially what happened is Jon started getting self-deleting text messages, and so did his sources. And they knew information that they could not have possibly known, that is not published.
Yeah.
And it scared some of his sources, and this happened within the last month. And Jon has an attorney on it, and that's all I'm prepared to say.
That's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I want to express, and that's, here on Esoteric Atlanta, because we've covered a lot of situations like this on my channel over the past 5 years. I know I have a lot of people here that listen to me that are very distrustful of the government. I mean, rightly so. Look throughout history, regardless of what political party you align with, the government has never been for the people, ever. There's always been issues and cover-ups. And I think the infuriating thing for people, and I'm glad that people across the world are becoming aware of this, is that when you start to be a whistleblower, when you start to expose the truth, you have this, I think we all have this like Pollyanna view on like, people will believe me and they'll see the truth, but you never expect the backlash that you're going to get. And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. My heart goes out to Jon. I really loved having him on the channel. He is a wealth of information. Like RockerMike, like you, Chris, Jon, if he's listening, he has an open invitation to come on my channel anytime he wants. You guys all know that. You all have open invitations anytime you want. You just let me know. But I understand how terrifying that is. And then for me, that also, and I don't know about Jon with this, but that strikes anger in me as well. As a private citizen, that makes me angry, because there should not be a cover-up here. And I know for the people who are not super familiar with the Son of Sam, that about the cult stuff and all that stuff with, allegedly, we'll say allegedly, with the Process Church of Final Judgment, the children, if you will. We know that there are some speculations of ties to, as we have to say here on YouTube, the 3-letter agency that starts with a C. There's speculations about ties to Hollywood. And so it becomes this bigger umbrella potentially. And all I'm saying, this is just speculation based off of circumstantial evidence, but there becomes this bigger umbrella of, this isn't just some offshoot little rinky-dink cult working out of some, at that point, derelict park in New York. But there's fear that it ties to a bigger ring of more powerful people. And I personally, and this is just my personal opinion, again, when it comes to research, I do try to keep an open mind and I do try to stay more grounded. But in my personal opinion, I suspect that there is probably some ties to bigger people, that there is probably some ties to the government within this same ring of people. I mean, look at, the island, we'll say, and what was happening with Mr. Jeffrey. There's all this stuff being revealed now. And so when people like Jon, who really, for the most part, in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, is also like an independent researcher, starts to get threatening messages, and starts to feel intimidated because of his research that he's putting out, therein lies the problem. Because that's what makes me angry, is that the people have the right to know the truth, and to have somebody try to bully or threaten is a huge problem.
And the thing is, for his sources to get these, it means that he was hacked.
Right.
That's the problem. And I mean, if people want to read more about Jonathan Mitchell, they can visit his Substack. It's at Jonathan Mitchell 1. It's spelled at JONATHANMITCHELL1. And he's on Substack, and he also has a book available to purchase through Amazon.
I follow him on Substack, guys, so I'll put his Substack, and I'll put Chris's Substack in the description box as well. But I just want to say too, and if Jon is watching right now, and if anybody else has been through this, because I've been through it as well, so I know how he's feeling. And again, we can talk about that in a next episode too, about like the harassment and stalking. But the silver lining, Jon, if you're listening, is your research is probably right. That's the silver lining in all this. They would not come after you if there wasn't some accuracy in your research. And so I guess, so I'm saying to my audience right now, if you want to support a fellow researcher, I'm going to put a link to his book in the description box. I'm going to put everything, link to Chris, everything. So make sure you're supporting Chris and Jon and RockerMike and all these people who are just normal human beings like you guys listening right now. Like I'm in my bedroom in my sweaty yoga clothes right now. Like we're not being paid by, Chris, we're not owned by anybody, are we? We're not paid off by anybody, are we?
No, we are not. And I'm in my pajamas as well, just so you know.
So we are literally not. I lose money doing this. But that means that we can put the truth out, because we're not owned by anybody, and we don't have to follow a set of rules. And so I think this is so important, Chris, because back to the NDA, it opens up a can of worms, and by Zeman not addressing the bigger issue with Manny Grossman, it leads people, in my opinion at least, this is just my perspective, it could potentially lead people to distrust him as well.
You are correct. And in Zeman's defense, he said that he should have enforced the non-disclosure agreement, and he will never not enforce one again. Yet at the same time, he won't speak publicly about Manny Grossman or enforce the NDA against him, but he threatened legal action against Jon.
Right.
And that's selective enforcement, and that's not okay. And that's a problem. And I understand that he has optics that he needs to take care of. All the same, I don't know what else to say.
And I will say, because if Zeman's listening to this, like, again, yes, this is a very nuanced situation. I understand that. I do think that he needs to actually make a more thorough statement if he wants to save his career and save his integrity. As an independent researcher here on YouTube, who has a fairly big platform, I've been invited to do projects with other people before. I have done multiple other projects with other people before off YouTube. And that's the beautiful thing about this, is we get to showcase our work, and we do get other work opportunities as independent contractors. Mm-hmm. Hearing this happening and seeing your blog and kind of seeing what's happened makes me, as an independent research, a little bit distrustful of Josh Zeman. So
it's made a lot of people really distrustful of Joshua Zeman. I mean, there are so many different statements within the Son of Sam community, through community posts and through conversations, that he's lost a lot of respect from a lot of decent researchers.
Yeah, because get that, Chris. I mean, think about like, so he didn't enforce this. And so as an independent, researcher and writer yourself, let's say he comes up to you, and I'm not saying this is going to happen with you or me, but anybody, this is the situation. Like he comes up to you and asks you to be a part of a new project. You'd probably think twice because you don't know whether you're safe to work with him, or you don't know whether, because it just is very suspicious that.
Well, you're correct there, because this is, I will tell you what transpired. Whenever we started talking back and forth by email after I took down the Mitchell interview, he offered to give me an interview on Medium, or I could come on his podcast and discuss the case. And I said, I'm not open to coming on your podcast, but I will do a Medium interview. But you're going to have to address the NDA. And you're
Yes.
going to need to address Grossman. And he did not agree to those terms. And while I thank him for giving me the opportunity to come on his podcast, yes, you have a point. Based on how everything has been handled, I don't feel like that. I didn't feel like that was an appropriate venue for me to come on to discuss the case, despite the offer, because I'm looking out for David Berkowitz's best interest. Carl De Niro has been re-victimized again through the process.
Absolutely.
Jon Mitchell has had problems, and this is something that's important, and this is something that the public needs to know.
Absolutely they do. It's about integrity too, Chris. Like Zeman needs researchers. He needs, in order for him to produce his work, he needs people. And when you have a reputation now of not enforcing an NDA and also on top of that punishing some but not others, then it's going to again make people very hesitant to work with you if that's what you're doing. And I agree with you, Chris. Like if I was in your shoes, I'd probably been like, you can come on my show, but I'm not going on yours. And the reason why I'm not going on yours too is because if you're trying to craft a narrative, I don't trust, and there's been some lack of integrity in the past and lack of ethics in the past. I don't trust that you're not going to take my words and my work and edit it in a way that is not what I said, that supports a narrative that maybe I don't believe in, that it plays, when you come on my show.
You're correct, because that's what happened in the recent documentary
Yes.
by Joe Berlinger. Is it was not handled correctly, and based on that, there are obvious distrust issues.
And as for me with my own platform here, Chris, like I do a lot of my own deep dives and my own episodes too. Most of my videos are just my own research, but then I bring other people on like you, RockerMike, all sorts of people. And I never want to be in a position where you or any other guest doesn't feel comfortable with me. Right. I want to make sure when I produce the material that it's up to the standards of my guest as well. I try to be so transparent when I have to like mute words, or if we have to put it on the other platform. I try to be very transparent about that, because I don't ever want my reputation to be in question when it comes to the integrity of the work that I produce with other people. And I often bring people on my channel that I don't actually totally agree with, and I don't edit them. I let them say their opinion. I let them say their stuff. I'm not combative, because I want to have open dialogue, and I want people from both sides to trust me, because I believe that is where we get the biggest. If we can listen to both sides of a story, maybe we can find the truth somewhere in the middle. And so what Josh Zeman has done, in my opinion, is really kind of shot himself in the foot. And I just don't know if do you think he realizes that these researchers might not be super trusting of him going forward?
I think that he probably realizes that.
I hope
all the same. In some cases, there have been some accusations that have been leveled at him that maybe are not as fair as they should be. I will not discuss those.
Right.
But
it is a tough.
I don't.
It's a tough situation
Yeah.
for him to be in. I get that. Like for sure, it's a tough situation for him to be in, and we're all fallible as human beings, and it wasn't handled properly. I think he said he has admitted it wasn't handled properly, but it's never too late to course correct. And
Hmm.
so that's one thing I wish he would do is just course correct. I think he would gain a lot of maybe some respect back from people if he actually just handled the elephant in the room and
Hmm.
spoke about it. I think people, do you think people would be more trusting if he finally just came out and spoke about the thing he won't speak about?
I really don't know. That's really up to him, Brice.
Yeah. I hope it's
Um,
the right thing for his sake, for the future
yeah,
of his
and
career.
I'm not going to go into detail about the different accusations leveled at him. I don't feel like that's um,
Right.
my business to do, nor is it really my business to evaluate whether the accusations are true or false, because um, some of it would need to be validated out. But everybody has a subjective opinion
Yep.
based on what they have personally experienced. The only way I can describe it is we all live in the same house. We're looking out different windows. We have a different view of what's going on, and maybe people need to start communicating with one another and seeing, okay, well, what is this person saying? What is this person saying? And then trying to interpret what's the overall picture.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Maybe we should start visiting each other's rooms to try to understand where the other person
Yeah.
is coming from. Well, it's that old adage, right? Listen to understand instead of listening to respond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, what Manny Grossman is not good at doing. Sorry, that's a perfect example. Like, listen to understand instead of just listening to respond. And absolutely. Well, what do you think? How do you think we go forward with this, Chris? Like, what do you think the solution is for the Son of Sam research community moving forward with this breach of confidence with the NDA, the leaking of the NDA?
I don't know. I mean, my personal opinion is and a lot of people feel this way, that the community is just really, it's broken beyond repair. I mean, the people that were involved in signing the non-disclosure agreement. I mean, there was a person that is friends with Richard Spiratz's daughter. That should have been disclosed as a conflict of interest.
Absolutely.
It wasn't
Absolutely.
done. He was present at whenever the Neto house was attacked. There was a witness who saw him, and he's also documented as being present at the Westchester meeting in 1976 that worked on the plan for the Son of Sam crimes. Then there's Grossman, and then there's another person who has actively fed false information to researchers. It's documented now with a minimum of 4 different people that I've talked to.
Wow.
And this person had also told people that he was not related, that he was a childhood friend of Joshua Zeman's. And apparently that's not true. Apparently that's not true either now. So, I don't know what's going on with this guy.
People just seek attention, don't they?
It's exhausting. I mean, why spread around false information? Like, there was one researcher that he gave a tip to, and this researcher looked into what he provided her for a week and wasted her time. And then apparently he just laughed in her face and said, "Oh, I was just testing you." You don't do that to people.
No.
You don't do that to people.
No,
period. It's documented.
That is so messed up. Like that would really piss me off. That takes a lot of time to research stuff, as you know, Chris. It's very time consuming, and and so to knowingly give someone false information because you're testing them, that's very narcissistic. It's also there's a lot of problems with that, and unfortunately, Chris, this is something that kind of
it's immature.
yeah,
And it
absolutely.
doesn't make you look good as a person whenever you've done that multiple times. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just one time, but there are too many stories of this person doing the same thing to others.
Right.
And
Right.
this is another time where people need to be put into a room and have an intervention. And people need to say, you know what, stop it. You're not helping yourselves.
No, yeah. I mean, this happens. It's so funny out because in our next episode, guys, we are going to kind of talk about different subjects, kind of along these lines. And I do think we should, in our next episode, Chris, when we talk more about like stalking and harassment and all sorts of other conflicts of interest, I do think we need to talk about more of a code of ethics, especially with conflicts of interest and what that looks like. And in the research world and all this kind of stuff, there are, when you're looking at sources, talking to people, this exists everywhere, and it's something that
Mhm.
people need to understand, because you could inadvertently have some confirmation bias over information you've given, not understanding where that information, what that information is connected to, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
it could skew your own perspective of reality when you're not even aware of the full story. And in a lot of these ways, I think when some of this stuff is not mentioned, when things are left out, it is a form of lying. You know, if they're
Mhm.
intentionally left out, you're intentionally leaving out vital information about connections with people. Obviously, you're intentionally leaving that out because you're trying to skew an opinion. And, you know, I think we try really hard. I mean, we're all guilty of confirmation bias. I get that. There's part of our human behavior that's never going to go away. But I think that most of us do try to take a very balanced approach to things. At least I do when I'm researching. I try to check my own opinions and replace them with every fact I can find, you know, and if that means my opinion has to change, it has to change. But you know, when people try to control a narrative, there's a problem. It becomes propaganda. When people don't respect the boundaries of a story, again, there becomes a problem, because there's a pushing of some sort of cover up, in my opinion, and that becomes an even more serious issue. And unfortunately, it's not just happening in Son of Sam. Again, it's happening in multiple stories, in multiple communities, and it's frustrating and it's aggravating, and it doesn't need to be ignored, because the more people, I think, understand that these things happen, the more they're going to be prepared for such trickery or deceit in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, in conclusion, Chris, I know we've been going for a little over an hour now. Is there anything you want to conclude with in this episode about these NDAs?
No, there's nothing else that I really want to conclude with. I feel like it's kind of been wrapped up,
Yeah.
and you and I will be doing another podcast about a separate issue
Yes.
that I do not want to wrap in with this non-disclosure agreement, because I don't want there to be misinterpretation
Absolutely. And
related to behaviors. I mean, this other incident has nothing to do with Joshua Zeman.
I think it's smart for my audience, right, watching or listening right now. We kind of discussed, like, kind of talking about both these incidents today, and I think you made a very smart decision, Chris, because things can get wrapped together and confused, and I think it's really
Yes.
we separate these two issues.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair to Josh Zeman, I know we came down hard on him, but it's really to kind of be fair to him that we discuss this separately from the other issues, so he's not involved in the other issues that he literally has nothing to do with.
Well, I feel like we came down on him, but all in the same breath, I've tried to be as fair as possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've said that humans are fallible. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. And I just really hope that he will course correct. And I think that people are forgiving. I think people can be very forgiving. And if he just kind of maybe speaks out on the elephant in the room, I think it would do a lot of healing to his reputation and to his career future if he just, made himself.
Well, it would do a lot of healing for a lot of people. People in the Son of Sam community
Yes.
that have lost respect and no longer have any trust.
Yeah. I mean, I listen, I am kind of on the fringes of the Son of Sam community because I cover so many cases on my show. And
Mhm.
I've lost respect for him. I absolutely have. I don't, I could,
Yeah.
and I think you don't really understand how important this is until you start being a researcher, until you start doing the hard work of really pulling through and piecing information together and to see how quickly that can be destroyed or betrayed. It gives you pause to work
Hmm.
with people, and your reputation is important. And yeah, you can't control. I'm not expecting Zeman to control anybody. Like, man, he can't control that the breach should happen. That wasn't his fault that the breach happened, but it is his fault that he has not addressed the actual problem and he's been selective over who receives punishment and who doesn't. That is his fault.
My main thing is whatever I say, I want it to be truthful.
Yes, same.
And I feel and if you want to criticize my work, fine, knock yourself out. But make sure that you're thorough and it's constructive criticism and don't make personal attacks.
Agreed.
Unless
100%.
unless the personal attack is absolutely warranted.
Right.
And
Agreed.
don't make a
Agreed.
you know.
Agreed. 100% agreed. And we're going to get into more issues next time, guys. Chris and I specifically, when we're going to talk about like stalking, harassment, code of ethics, all that kind of stuff. And I think even next time, Chris, we're going to do something that I don't really do that often, but talk about what it's like to be women in this industry as well,
Mhm.
and how that plays into it too from our perspective. And this is not something that I like to harp on that much, but it's very, and when I say that, we were saying off camera that most of the men, RockerMike, Carl, most of the men that we have worked with have been
Mhm.
incredible. I consider them friends, so respectful of us. But there's been a couple of personalities that have popped up that you and I were talking about. We think a lot of this stuff is coming from the fact potentially that we're being spoken to in certain ways because we're women. And we're going to talk more about that
Mhm.
next time, guys. I'm going to leave that on a cliffhanger. You can just tell as a woman, can't you, Chris? You can just tell when it's when a man says certain things about you and you're like, that's, you wouldn't say that to a man. You wouldn't say that about a man. um, and so we're going to get more into that tea, we'll say, that
Mhm.
drama on the next episode, you guys. And yeah, so anything you want to conclude with, Chris? I know you
No,
blog
there's
this
nothing
morning.
else that I want to there's nothing else that I want to conclude with.
Okay, perfect. Well, you guys, I swear to God, please subscribe to Chris's blog and her Substack. Again, that will be in the description box below. She's an incredible writer. She's an incredible researcher. And in this time, this day and this age where it's hard to get the truth, it's hard to get the real news, Chris is an excellent source, and she's not owned by anybody. She's not paid by anybody. She works for herself. And so I would highly suggest making sure that you are subscribed to her blog. As always, as I have said, I have so many people, Chris, from all over the globe. But what happens in our country is also a mirror of things that are happening in other countries too, especially when it comes to mainstream media and true crime. And so even if you live in a different country, I think it would behoove you to actually read Chris's blog, because you're going to get insight into patterns you can start noticing in your own country and start taking your power back. Knowledge is power, and knowledge protects. And
Well, to be clear too, I am working on a fourth undergraduate in journalism. So a lot of my work is also being incorporated in my college coursework.
amazing.
Um, yeah. So I do publish daily, but frankly, most of my blogs are under 10 minutes apiece. And if you work out the math, it's maybe the equivalent of a 3 to 4 hour podcast a month, whenever there are some people that are podcasting, 3 hours for just one podcast. So really, frankly, reading the blogs is much less time consuming.
And you have the information written down, to save Chris's
Yes.
information, especially if you are a researcher into true crime. I would suggest really saving her information, because she cites all of her work. And so that gives you And, I would say that too with my stuff, Chris, especially when I was like doing deep dives into the missing books of the Bible and like really old ancient history. I would
Hmm.
always say people like, don't take my word for it, but you can use my sources as a way to
Yes.
start your own research. I'm
Yes.
kind of giving you breadcrumbs to start for your start.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because some people say, like, well, I don't even know where to start, I don't even know where to look. Well, I'm like, well, you can look at my sources and go from there, and you'll see other things that I haven't seen, and it'll lead you down other paths. And so, and you guys, and of course, as always, we just want to support people like Chris and Jon Mitchell and RockerMike and all the many, many, many independent researchers and journalists out there who are trying against all odds to put the truth out. Most of us don't make any money. Most of us lose money doing this. And so it really helps to have that support, to have a subscriber, to have people just click to follow us. It really does give us that morale boost and helps us get our work out there. And we try, I know Chris and I both, I think I can speak for you, we try to be as accurate as possible in our research. And so I thank everybody for listening. And I look forward to our next episode, Chris. I think that's going to be a really important one and a really intense one.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
All right, you guys. Hopefully, I'll have my camera turned on for that one, guys. Hopefully, I won't be stuck in sweaty yoga clothes for that one. But I thank you so much, Chris, and for all the little kids who are celebrating Halloween. I hope no little kids were listening to this because this is a very grown-up conversation. But I hope you have a very happy Halloween and that you get lots of candy and you have lots of fun dressing up in your costumes. Don't forget to have fun. And yeah, we will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.